Om. Om. Sagana Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sadasivasamaramvam Sankaracharyamadhyamam Asmadacharyaparyantam Vande Guru Paramparam Vande Guru Paramparam. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tado Jayamudiraeta. Dr. Brahma, from the text is what we supposed to read today, from verse 55.
Yes, Dr. Mara. We finished reading the word meanings.
Oh,
Finished this yesterday. So
oh,
you can go back to the main PDF, the Gita Home Study PDF.
okay.
And after Sthita Prajnasya Ka Bhasha, that's what Arjuna asks Krishna.
Mm.
The Krishna's reply to that. From there onwards, we said we will revise the Sthita Prajna Lakshanas one more time before going to chapter 3.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay, so we are not reading from Prasannatraya.
No, Prasthanatrayam was done yesterday.
Oh, okay, got it. Sorry, I didn't attend yesterday. I should have
No problem. No problem.
reviewed it, but I didn't have a chance. Okay, I'll quickly share that and then
Yeah.
we'll go from there. Oh, didn't share. Okay. So we are going to go from verse number 55, right? Okay.
I think it's verse 55. Please check because I think Arjuna's question, Sita Prajnasya Ka Bhasha, is 54.
Okay. $54. One second. Yeah, right. Arjuna Uvacha. That's 54. Mm. Arjuna uvacha Sitapragnasya ka bhasha samadhistasya samadhistasya keshava Stiti Stitadihi kim prabhaseta kimasita vrajate kim sorry Arjuna Arjuna Uvacha said Keshava O Keshava Sita Pragnasya of one in whom the knowledge is firm knowledge is firm Samadhis Samadhistasya Samadhistasya of one whose mind abides in the Atma self. So there is a Sita Pragnasya and Samadhistasya. Bhasha description, Ka what, Tita Dihi one whose mind is not shaken by anything. Kim how, Prabhaseta Prabhasheta Prabhasheta is would speak. Prabhasheta would speak. Kim, how. Asita would sit. Kim, how. Rajita, Rajita would walk. So Arjuna Uvacha, Arjuna Uvacha, Keshava Stita Pragnasya Samadhistasya Bhasha Ka Titadihi Kim Prabhasheta Kim Asita Kim Rajata. Arjuna said, O Keshava, what is the description of a person of a firm wisdom, one whose mind abides in the Atma, self? How does such a person, whose mind is not shaken by anything, speak, sit, and walk? So again, I'll read this. O Keshava, what is the description of a person of a firm wisdom, one whose mind abides in the Atma self? How does such a person, whose mind is not shaken by anything, speak, sit, and walk? Shankara introduces this verse by saying that word Arjuna, desiring to know the characteristics of a person who knows the Atma, asked a question. How does such a person speak, sit, and walk? The word Sthita Prajna refers to a person who has no doubts, vagueness, or error with reference to the knowledge of Atma. Thus, the knowledge stays, becomes Sthita. One's knowledge can also be so erroneous that there is no doubt or vagueness, but the error will show in time. Here, the knowledge stays without error. The word Chitta Prajna, being in the masculine gender, means the person for whom the knowledge stays and not the knowledge itself. The word for knowledge is Prajna, which is in feminine gender. Prajna can mean knowledge of anything, such as archery. For example, Shankara therefore clarifies the knowledge being spoken of as well established, well rooted knowledge that I am the whole, Param Brahma Aham Asmi. The topic here is Paramatma, not archery. One second. Paramatma, not archery, and the person for whom the knowledge of Atma being Param Brahma is steady and is called Sita Prajna. This person is also described as one who is in Samadhi, Samadhista. Oh, okay, that's why it is Samadhi, Samadhista, one who is in Samadhi. One whose mind is abiding in the Atma is awake to Atma. Okay, one whose mind is abiding in the Atma is awake to the Atma. Arjuna wanted to know how Krishna would describe such a person. He asked, Sita Prajnasya Ka Bhasha. Shankara puts this question in another way. How is this person described by others? Khatam asau paraihi bhashyate. Bhashyate. Bhagavan used the word samadhi in the previous words, not Chitta Prajna. It was Arjuna who coined this later word, and his question reveals that he seemed to know what it was all about, at least in the first line. He asked for a description of a wise person, a Sita Prajna, which was an excellent question. He also used the word Sitadi, meaning a person whose buddhi remains firm. But then he asked, does this person talk? Kim Prabhasheta? Does he or she sit? Kim Asita? Does he or she walk? Kim Rajeta? Rajeta? Shankara did not think that these questions, as worded, were Arjuna's real questions. To ask, does a wise person talk, would have been a meaningless because Krishna had been talking all along. It would also have meant that Arjuna had a doubt about whether Krishna knew what he was talking about, and therefore whether he was a Sitaprajna. Because Kim can mean what or how. Shankara took Arjuna's question to mean the later. How, right? How does a wise person talk, sit, and walk? When someone asks you a question, asks asks you a question, you either answer the question or you answer the person. When you answer the person, you still answer the question. But it is the spirit of the question that you address. When you answer the person, you consider what the person had in mind when he or she asked the question. Before a person talks, he or she has a sense to convey. This is the reason why one talks. Therefore, the listener tries to understand the intention or the sense of what the speaker is attempting to convey. This is the real listening and is very important. So I'll read this one line again. Therefore, the listener tries to understand the intention or the sense of what the speaker is attempting to convey. This is real listening and is very important. Whether you are reading something, or someone has written, okay, whether you are reading something someone has written, or listening to something someone is saying, a person may not always say what he or she really wants to say. A person's look may be enough for you to see his or her language. This sometimes happens without the eyes also, like when you hear two or three words and understand the whole sentence. It all depends on your capacity to see what the speaker wants to say. So far, we read about this getting, it's more like an introduction about what it is. The spirit of Arjuna's question. The spirit of Arjuna's question. When the Lord Krishna answered Arjuna. He did not answer his question. Instead, he answered the person, as we will see. If he had answered the question, what could he have said? Would he have described a Sitaprajna as one who walks very slowly or quickly because the person is a Sitaprajna? Suppose the Sitaprajna does not have any legs, or would Krishna have said that a Sitaprajna talks very slowly because he or she is very alert, or that being very alert, Sita Prajna's words are carefully measured, come only in half-minute intervals, the person being so rooted in the self. What does all this mean? What does it make any how does it make any difference? Some people think that if you talk very slowly, you are wonderful. They think that the words of a wise person who talks slowly come from infinity and therefore they take time. They come from such depths, it seems. People can be very easily fooled by those who pose as wise by saying very little and speaking very leisurely. There is yet another popular description of a wise person. Words just tumble out. The physical organ is incapable of keeping track of the pace of the pace of the sorry, the pace of the quicksilver mind of the wise. It is so mercurial. No god has made an organ of speech that can keep pace with it. The person has such enormous energy. And then there's another type of a wise person, it seems, who, having reached Atma, does not talk at all. He or she is always in samadhi. People come and the person just looks at them without even blinking. Why? Because he or she is a Sthita Prajna, one of steady wisdom. Thus, we see that if Arjuna's question had taken literally, no answer would have been possible unless Krishna himself believed in such definitions of a wise person. And therefore, the second line of Arjuna's question didn't mean anything to Krishna, but there was a spirit to it. That is, how does a wise person interact with the world? How does he or she talk and go about in the world? Is there any indication that this person has wisdom? Is there anything that betrays or reveals the wisdom he or she has? Will there be any difference in how this person interacts with the world and how an ordinary person interacts? There should be some difference. Therefore, what is it that characterizes the person's wisdom? This was the spirit of Arjuna's question, and it was this question that was answered in the verses to come. So, this is about Arjuna's question, how Sita Prajna interacts with the world, like how he walks, talks, and sit. Hmm. So that brings about all this information. Are we doing Manana after each thing, or we continue to read Dr. Ramada? Sorry.
What is it, Dr. Mara?
I'm wondering, are we going to do Manana after each of these verse, or we continue
No,
to
you
read?
can continue. Yeah, you can continue to
Okay.
the next verse.
Okay, good. Thanks. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Prajahati yada kaman sarvan parthamanogataan atmaneva atmana atmaneva atmana tushtaha sita prajnastadochyate. Shri Bhagavan, the Lord, Uvacha said, Partha, O Partha, Yada, when, Sarvan, all, Manogatan, as they appear in the mind, Kaman, desires, Prajahati, Prajahati, gives up, Prajahati gives up, Atmani in oneself, Eva alone, Atmana with oneself, in oneself with oneself. Tushtaha, one who is happy, tada, but then, Chitta Prajnaha, a person of ascertained knowledge, Uchyate, is said to be. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, Partha Yada Sarvan Manogatan, Kaman Prajahati, Atmani Eva Atmana Tushtaha, Tada Atmani Atmana Tushtaha, Tada Chitta Prajnaha Uchyate. Sri Bhagavan said, when a person gives up all desires, all the desires. So when a person gives up all the desires as they appear in the mind, O Partha, happy in oneself with oneself alone, that person is said to be one of ascertained knowledge. The characteristics stated here and in the subsequent verses of the chapter are with reference to a person who has already attained this knowledge. Who has already attained this knowledge. Both the definition lakshana of a wise person, sthita prajna, and the means for becoming wise, the sadhana, are discussed. So I'll read this paragraph one more time. The characteristics stated here and in the subsequent verses of the chapter are with reference to a person who has already attained this knowledge. Both the definition lakshana of a wise person, Chitta Prajna, and the means of becoming wise, the sadhana, are discussed. Although Arjuna only wanted to know who is the Chitta Prajna, the sadhana is also taught because throughout the Shastra, the characteristics of a wise person are said to also be the means for preparing one's mind for the knowledge of the Atma. In his commentary, Shankara referred to a Chitta Prajna as one who is accomplished, one who has made it, a Kritartha who has made it, right? Kritartha. The characteristics of one who has made it by gaining this knowledge become the sadhana, the means for gaining the knowledge. Thus, the wise person's spontaneous expressions in life, the attitudes, disposition with which he or she interacts with others, are the characteristics that establish the norms to be followed by the seekers of this wisdom. So, what we are supposed to follow? Spontaneous expressions in life, the attitude and disposition with which he or she interacts with the others are the characteristics that establish the norms to be followed by the seekers of this wisdom. So the definition is also the means. So the definition and also the means of sadhana for to become the wise person. These characteristics are to be cultivated because they are the means by which the seeker becomes a wise person. The seeker becomes a wise person. Without these sadhanas, a person does not become wise. Thus, in the beginning, there is a sadhana, and then later the sadhana becomes an expression. So, Thus, in the beginning, there is sadhana, and then later the sadhana becomes an expression. Sympathy, love, freedom, giving, and so on are all sadhanas in the beginning. They are means for self purification and maturity, eventually becoming the natural expressions of the same person. It is not that the person tries to be sympathetic, loving, and giving. He or she is naturally sympathetic, loving, and giving. However, for the person who has not yet made it, he or she tries. For example, to give. This is necessary because along with the giving thought, there is also the opposite thought in the form of a reluctance to give. In the mind of the person, the question, why should I give, still arises. If the ego is there telling me not to give, then I am not a giving person. So, this has to be understood here. If the ego is there telling me not to give, then I am not a giving person. Thus, giving, love, sympathy, consideration, and so on, all of which are the spontaneous expressions of a wise person, become the sadhanas for the person who wants to be wise, the mumukshu. The sadhana itself is to be accomplished by effort, yatna. The sadhana itself is to be accomplished by effort, yatna. If you succeed in acquiring these characteristics, then you become firmly established in the knowledge. You gain jnana nishta. What was accomplished with the effort becomes the natural expression of the wise person. That is the rule. Therefore, all the universal values, being natural to the Sthita Prajna, are the sadhanas for a mumukshu. They become natural to the Sthita Prajna because they are natural expression of oneself. But in the beginning, the person deliberately cultivated them. To become wise, you have to follow them. Only then you gain jnana nishta. Thus, these values are both the qualifications and the qualities you need for the knowledge to take place. And in time, they become very natural to you. The qualities represented by universal values are not like a boat that you use to cross the river and then leave behind once you have reached the other side. Even though these qualities are the means for preparing your antakarana for the knowledge, they become natural expressions because you continue to be a person with such a mind. You interact with the world as before, but now you interact spontaneously because these qualities have become natural to you. Thus, in the beginning, they are in the form of sadhanas, the means for accomplishing self knowledge, whereas later they are like ornaments, very natural, spontaneous expressions of the person. So, like I'll read the last line here. Thus, in the beginning, they are in the form of the sadhanas, the means for accomplishing knowledge, whereas later they are like ornaments. They are very natural, spontaneous expressions of the person. Bhagavan Krishna included both the definition of a wise person and the means for becoming wise in his response to Arjuna's request for a description of his Sthita Prajna, because they are one and the same thing. Shankara makes the same point in his commentary, introducing this verse. Krishna also indicated that giving up all desires, sarvan kaman, okay, giving up all desires, sarvan kaman, does not mean that the Sita Prajna has no desires, but that as they arise in his mind, manogatan, he gives them up, prajahati. So sarvan kaman manogatan. So as they arise in his mind, he gives them up prajahati, prajahati. That means the desires are not pursued. In this way, the wise person gives up all desires. So the wise person gives up all desires. Can you be happy if you give up desires? So we read about the Sita Prajna definition, right? Sita Prajna and the sadhanas, the definition and the means. And then now we are going to, can you be happy if you give up desires? Now the question may arise, if a man gives up all his desires, does that not mean that he will have no happiness, ananda? We know that a man is happy only when he fulfills a desire. But here he gives up all desires as they arise in his mind and at the same time continues to live. If all his desires disappear and he disappears with them, there is no problem. But if he gives up all desires and continues to exist in this world, it seems that he has no way of being happy. What recourse does he have except to become high on drugs or a madman who is always laughing at nothing? In order to answer this question, yeah, we have to take two things into consideration. First, people are not happy, and secondly, people are always busy fulfilling their desires in order to be happy. They are always hopeful that happiness will come because they do become happy occasionally. Tomorrow will be better, they say. Everything will be wonderful when this is over. It seems, therefore, that people who pursue their desires are always working for happiness, whereas those who have given up all desires have no way of being happy, and no one can remain for a long period without being happy. So, no one can remain for a long period without being happy. Bhagavan corrected this train of thinking by saying that such a person is happy with himself or herself, Atmani eva atmanas tushtaha. In himself or herself, the wise person is happy. Everyone is happy in himself or herself anyway, but always because of something else. Here, without any external props or circumstances, without expecting or depending upon any condition whatsoever, the person is happy. The analogy of a sugar crystal is useful here. Simply by being a sugar crystal is sweet. It does not require a sweetening agent to be sweet because it is already saturated with sweetness. That is why it is sugar crystal. So they are comparing to this line here. Atmani eva atmana tushtaha. In oneself, being in oneself. So the sugar crystal, that's why it is a sugar crystal. Therefore, it cannot be sweetened further. Similarly, one who is happy, tushta, does not depend on any other object or situation to be happy. By one's own awakening to oneself alone, one is happy. So you have to be awakened to yourself, not sleeping. By one's own awakening to oneself alone, one is happy. Such a person is called Chitta Prajna. No wonder we are called a somnambulist. Shankara explains here that Sthita means well established and Prajna is that knowledge which is born of Viveka, the discriminative inquiry into and analysis of the Atma and Anatma. Therefore, the one for whom this knowledge is well established is called a Sthita Prajna or a Vidwan, a wise person. So I'll read this paragraph one more time. Shankara explains here that Chitta means well established and Prajna is the knowledge which is born of Viveka, the discriminative inquiry into and analysis of Atma and Anatma. Therefore, the one for whom this knowledge is well established is called Chitta Prajna or Vidwan, a wise person. Arjuna wanted to know what a Chitta Prajna was, and this was Krishna's definition. It is an excellent and complete definition. A Chitta Prajna, Krishna said, is one who, being awake to the fact of the Atma, being happy for no other reason, gives up all desires that arise in his or her mind. So 3 points here. One who, being awake to the fact of the Atma, and being happy for no other reason, and gives up all desire that arise in his or her mind. That is Chitta Prajna definition. The difference between binding and the difference between binding and non-binding desires. Desires, kamas, are divided into two types, ragas and dveshas. Raga dveshas are nothing but desire. The common word for both of them is kama. I want is kama. I want such and such can be either something you want to acquire or protect or something that you want to avoid or get rid of. Either way, it is a kama. I want. This want can be in the form of raga or dvesha, depending on whether you want to acquire something or get rid of something. Raga dveshas are also of two types, binding and non-binding. Whenever the Shastra talks about kama in the form of raga or dvesha, it is referring only to those that are binding. So whenever it talks about it, it's only about binding desires. When a person gives up all kamas as they arise in the mind, he or she does so for a reason. Otherwise, giving them up is not possible. That a man who gives up all the desires in his mind and who is happy in himself is called a wise man, Chitta Prajna. Seems to mean that the first condition is a necessity for the second condition. Thus, in order to be happy with oneself, one has to give up all desires. How is that possible? Unless you are happy with yourself, how can you give up all desires? If, in order to give up all desire, you have to be happy with yourself, And in order to be happy with yourself, you have to give up all desires. You are in an unenviable position. It is something like mentally unbalanced man who is advised that unless he marries, he will not be cured. In other words, the diagnosis and the treatment are the one, because no father will give his daughter in marriage to a madman. He will not be able to marry. Unless he marries, he cannot be mentally well. We seem to have the same situation here. But do we? According to some modern translations, it may look that way, but not according to Shankara. So, in order to be happy, you give up all desires. So, we read about binding desires and what are non binding desires. Non binding desires are not the problem. First, Shankara created a problem by saying that a person who gives up all his desires is like a madman. Otherwise, how can he be happy? Then he said, a man who is happy in himself by his own awakening to himself does not need any desire to be fulfilled in order to be happy. What desires are being referred to here? Only those desires whose fulfillment is meant to make me happy, and not those that are non binding in nature for me. So, only non binding desires can meant to make you happy. Non binding desires may include a desire to do, a desire to write, a desire to teach, a desire to give, a desire to just simply stay put, and so on. Non binding desires are not being considered here, only binding desires. If a wise person is one who gives up all desires, where does that leave, where does that leave Shankara, who wrote the commentary on giving up desires? Was he a wise man? Was Krishna, who taught Arjuna, a wise man? Was Vyasa, who wrote the Mahabharata, in which the Gita appears, a wise man? If only those who have given up all desires are wise, if only those who have given up all desires are wise, none of these men can be considered to have been wise. Krishna seemed to have a desire to teach. Krishna all but pounced on Arjuna. He did not even mind that he was in the midst of a battlefield. Krishna's knowledge seemed to have been bottled up inside him, and it came pouring out for the Krishna, Arjuna's asking in one long continuous flow. Aside from his desire to teach, Krishna seemed to have some other desires too. For example, when he was asked to drive Arjuna's chariot, he agreed. Had Krishna given up every desire that arose in his mind, he could not have driven the chariot. But he did drive it. He also took up the flute and played a lot of songs. If this desire had been given up, where is that? If this desire had been given up, all the gopis would be still, waiting to hear his music, and he would be still sitting with his flute poised. He would not have even had the desire to remove his hands from the flute, since Krishna presented himself as one who performed various actions, and since doing presupposes okay himself who performed various actions, and since doing presupposes desire, he could not have been a Sthitaprajna by his own definition. Vyasa also must have had a lot of desires to have written this great magnum opus, this huge work called the Mahabharata. To have kept on writing as he did, Vyasa must have had a very special mind indeed, and a lot of desires as well. People often have the desire to accomplish some enormous project or the other, but then after a while they give it up. They begin it but do not complete it. Not Vyasa. He began and finished every chapter. Thus, according to the definition, he could not have been a jnani. In fact, no teacher can be a jnani. Thus, they must all be ajnanis. If the desire is not there, a wise person cannot teach, which means that only the other wise can teach, but they have nothing to teach. Unfortunately, the explanation put forward in some modern commentaries of the Gita based on incorrect translations have created a lot of problems in understanding what is meant by giving up all desires. If these were not the case, there would be no misunderstanding because what was said originally by Krishna is very clear. So we read about non binding desires. When you are everything, what is there to be done? When you are everything, what is there to be done? As Krishna told Arjuna in the third chapter, a wise person is not bound by his or her desires and is not subject to any kind of mandate. Desires are only binding if you take yourself to be karta, a doer. Only then do you have things to do. Only then can there be dereliction of duty. If, on the other hand, you do not look upon yourself as a karta and are awake to the knowledge of yourself, there is no question of self being a doer. Therefore, there is no doership and nothing to be done. So I'll read this line again. If, on the other hand, if you do not look upon yourself as a karta, so I am not the doer, and are awake to the knowledge of yourself, there is no question of the self being a doer. There is no question of the self being a doer. Therefore, there is no doership and nothing to be done. Lord Krishna told Arjuna that because he had no desires, he had nothing to do, because Krishna is everything and everything is himself. What is there to be accomplished? Nevertheless, he was always active, meaning that all the activities he performed were non binding. If activities are non binding, the prompting factor of activity, karma, must also be non binding. Again, if activities are non binding, the prompting factor of activity, karma, that's a desire, must also be non binding. Here in the Gita, non binding karma is not the topic, only binding karma is discussed. The placement of the words when yada and then tada in this verse is also significant. The word then comes much later, and until it comes, the force of the word when continues. When a man gives up all desires as they arise and being happy with himself in himself, only then can he be called a Sitaprajna. The force of when is the same for both conditions, when he gives up all desires and when he is happy with himself in himself, depending on nothing for his happiness. So that's the part about when and then. When he gives up all desires and when he is happy with himself in himself, depending on nothing for his happiness. Therefore, one gives up all desires arising in one's mind. One gives up all desires arising in one's mind that are binding in nature. the desire to be secure, to be happy, to be somebody, and so on. Yes, a person who is secure with himself or herself gives up such desires naturally. The word tushta is in the verse does not merely mean happiness. It implies security also. The insecure cannot be tushta, happy. Therefore, one who is secure is also happy. And giving up all desires is possible only when one is happy with oneself. Thus, the definition of Chitta Prajna is complete. What else can be said? One who is happy with oneself is a wise person who can totally accept himself or herself because the self is acceptable. The self is perfect, it is not imperfect. Perfection means that there is no sense of imperfection whatsoever. The self is free from any sense of imperfection, and the whole creation, the whole world, the universe is not separate from the self. Because the self is complete, Purna, it cannot be improved upon. Just as the sweetness of sugar cannot be improved upon, so too the fullness of Atma cannot be improved upon. Being awake to the fact that the person is happy. To be wise, you must have wisdom. To be wise, you must have wisdom. This then is a lakshana. Okay, here it is again. To be wise, you must have wisdom. This then is the lakshana, the definition of a wise person. To be wise requires wisdom, nothing else. How a person walks, talks, and sits means nothing. Anyone can learn to walk in a certain way, and if the definition of a wise person is that he or she talks slowly, then everyone who talks slowly would be a jnani. The speed at which one talks or how one walks means nothing. Wisdom alone makes one wise, just as being friendly is the only way to make friends. There is no other way. Similarly, some people ask how they can develop love. Similarly, some people ask how they can develop love. All that is to be done is to love. What else can you do? You cannot discover love outside of love itself. If you want to discover more love, be loving. Create conditions that will help you discover love, conditions that are not inimical to the discovery of love. People often create certain conditions in themselves, knowingly or unknowingly, that are inimical to the discovery of love. If you avoid doing this, you will find that you are loving. Love is a manifestation of one's fullness. Love is nothing but the express form of fullness, ananda. And just as wheat flour may takes on names such as bread, rolls, and muffins, so too love is subject to various forms. The different names given to wheat represent modifications of the wheat. Similarly, love is a simple emotion which is a modification or manifestation of ananda. If you analyze love, you will find nothing but ananda. The manifest form of ananda is love, and love itself turns into such natural qualities as sympathy, compassion, and giving, depending upon the situation. And when that same love is distorted in any way, it becomes calmer, leading to negative emotions such as greed, anger, depression, and so on. All of these then are nothing but one expression of Ananda, love. This is why we say love is Bhagavan, meaning that the express form of Ananda is Bhagavan. The express form of Ananda is Bhagavan. So nice. And what is Bhagavan? The essential form of Bhagavan is Satchit Ananda. The express form of Ananda, Ishvara, the Lord, is love. The modifications of this love can be either positive or negative. Sympathy and compassion are examples of the positive modifications of love, whereas negative modifications are anger, greed, jealousy, and so on. All that is there is one Ananda, expressed or unexpressed. Unexpressed, it is the Swarupa, the very nature of fullness, which is the definition of Ananda. Expressed, it becomes love, prema. We shall see more of this definition later. Here, the Sthita Prajna is the one who discovers the Ananda in himself or herself and knows that there is nothing other than oneself. So, Sthita Prajna is one who discovers the Ananda in himself or herself, knows that there is nothing other than oneself. When one says, I am the whole, it means that the person is in himself or herself the fulfillment of all desires. We shall see as we proceed how the discovery of oneself and the fulfillment of all desires are not separate but identical. So that's about 55. I think we are 1 minute away. I'll read this next verse just to finish. दुःखेश दुःखेशनु दुःखेष्वनुद्विग्नमनाः सुखेषु विगतस्पृहाः वीतरागमयक्रोधः चित्तधिर्मुनिरुच्यते. Dukkeshu in adversities, anudvignamanaha are not affected. Sukeshu in pleasures, vigatasprahaha, one who is without earning. Vitaraga bhayakrodaka, one who is free from longing, fear, and anger. Munihi, the wise person. Chittadihi, one whose knowledge remains. Uchyate is said. The one who is not affected by adversities, who is without earning for pleasures, and is free from longing, fear, and anger, is said to be a wise person whose knowledge remains. So, one who is not affected by adversities, who is without earning for pleasures, free from longing, fear, anger, is said to be wise person whose knowledge remains. Okay, so far we read about Arjuna's question about what Chitta Prajna is like, how he walks, talks, and sit, and then Krishna's answer to the Bhagavan Krishna's answer to who the Chitta Prajna is like. Lakshana of Chitta Prajna and Sadhana, it's a definition as well as the means of becoming wise for a mumukshu. It's very nice to read it again. It's so good. Anyone have any question or anything?
जलता है साइड से।
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. So Sita Prajna is one who is well established in his knowledge, who is awakened to himself and gives up all desires as it arises in his mind, especially the binding desires in the mind. So the Lakshana is for the Chitta Prajna is that being Ananda, right? Happy, but the happiness comes in the beginning. You have to put in effort to gain those qualities like loving, caring, sympathy, compassion, and giving, like that. And then once you gain that knowledge, it becomes natural expression to you. So that is, for that person is all naturally loving, compassionate, and giving, and so on. But if they don't do it, like more of those desires arise in their mind, and then trying to fulfill for security, for the purpose of security, for the enjoyment, like pleasures, then the desire is not fulfilled, then they get anger, all that opposite negative emotions comes up, like anger, greed, jealousy, and so on. So this is the difference between the desires. And then they talk about desire as raga dveshas, and the raga dveshas are two types, the binding and non-binding. The binding desires is the one we need to get rid of, and the non-binding desires are okay. You do those with those desires, you're doing the activity, and with the attitude of non-doership. So that's a summary that I got. And of course, there's more to it. The guys can share. It's also time. So what we have to do is we have to put in effort to become, develop those qualities. Even the thought arises in your mind, can you give, you don't want to give, like that, it's also that ego is telling you not to give. That itself a bad thing. That itself the binding desire. So even in the that we think, oh, it's okay, like you change your mind, it doesn't
So
sound
that
like.
is not true giving. When the
That's right.
ego is telling you not to
Yeah,
give somewhere,
right.
that is not true giving. So that is still work in progress. Whereas a
Right.
Siddha Prajna very
Mm.
naturally is giving.
Right.
He doesn't make an effort to give.
So that much, amount of effort, meaning you have to completely have that you, even when you're trying to give, we need to be mind, body, everything have to synchronize. You want to do things perfectly, right? Not your, okay, your mind says something, your body says do something else, is not right. So like the walk, mind, there's a word, right? Like everything has to be aligned. Arjavam or something like that, right?
Arjavam.
Yeah. So it has to be in that mode. I mean, it happens to us, right? So it's not like that was, combing through each and every line. Today, it was even more helpful to understand this better, right? Like
Because
even the
ultimately these are what we all have to cultivate, no?
cultivate. Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah,
the whole purpose of studying the Gita and
yeah,
being on this path is to refine ourselves,
yeah,
cultivate these
definitely.
things. So
Mm,
these
yeah,
Stita Prajna Lakshanas are our sadhana tools.
right. Definitely, it's worth reading it again and trying to imbibe those things, how we go about it in our daily life, um, and where this inimical, it said, right? Inimical, like where the love and compassion doesn't come to you because there are our own that we call this pratibandhakas, is that it? Or,
Pratibandhakas.
yeah,
And we tend to create them ourselves, no?
right.
And
So
how are
like
they created? Because of our ragas and dveshas.
gracious, yeah. Mm.
And fundamentally, why do we do create raga dveshas? Because we feel ourselves as insecure.
Yeah,
You're not awake to yourself. You're not
right.
awake to the the wealth within,
Mm, right.
the
So
the true
we
nature
have
of
to ask
yourself.
all these questions to yourself. Why are you
Mm,
having the desire? Why you have the raga
mm.
dveshas? So then you answer one of each of the questions. Then you try to come out of this. Like you said, the insecurity causes the desires
Yeah,
or
wanting to be secure
wanting to, yeah, the pleasure or something.
instead
Mm,
of going inward, we
mm,
go outwardly, thinking
right.
that our so and so desire, if
This will
such a
make me
person
happy.
behaves like this, I will be happy.
Mm,
We put these preconditions,
mm-hmm,
when and then, and that
mm-hmm,
is when we get caught up in this
mm,
world.
right.
Those are the inimical situations we are creating. Whereas the sthita prajna is atmani eva atmana tushtaha,
Mm,
is like a sugar crystal. Is
mm-hmm,
sweet by itself. It doesn't need anything else to sweeten it.
yeah.
So he is happy by himself. He does not need anything
Yeah,
else to make him happier.
yeah. Yeah, when I read that, remember we read another thing, the Somanambulist, like
Mm,
how we sleeping ourselves. Like he says that word even makes sense, right? Awaken to yourself, awaken to
mm,
oneself.
mm.
And he is in himself, with himself like that, Um, how true it is, like you really have to awaken to yourself, like you're not uh, thinking about all the time, looking outward, like you said, like all the things. I mean, in a way we look at it, but this is advaita, but advaita says it's not real and that real thing. But I don't know what's your opinion, Dr. Brahma. I know we pretty much follow Sankaracharya, but there is the other version of this, like where Vishishta Advaita, they say like whatever you see is also Brahman, right? I mean, of course, with the name and form is there, but we are not able to separate it because of this ignorance. Uh, so I don't want to get confused
It's
between
like
these
what
two.
Gurudev says. No,
Uh,
I
uh,
don't know much about the Vishishta Advaita, but
uh,
what I do know is what Gurudev talks of
mm,
classical chemistry and um, what is that? Um, what is that? Quantum physics. Yeah, quantum
mm.
physics and classical chemistry.
Okay,
So,
okay.
quantum physics is what tells you everything is one.
Mm,
Whereas
right.
classical chemistry, it tells you salt is different from sugar,
Mm-hmm.
water is different from, say, sulfuric acid. So,
Right.
at the level of the world, there is the same quantum physics transforms
Metaphysics.
itself into different different
Material
entities,
entities,
material
yeah.
things.
Mm-hmm.
So at one level, when you look at it, when that film of Maya comes in, everything becomes differentiated.
Right.
When you remove that Maya, the film of Maya, then what
It
remains
becomes
is just
one.
one.
Oh, okay,
It's
okay.
only the same waveform. It
Mm,
manifests itself in different ways.
right. So that's what I was thinking today as we're talking about. Uh, I know everything is perverted by Brahman. So in and around us is Brahman. So if that is the case, whatever we are seeing is also Brahman. We are also Brahman. But only thing is, the way we are reading now is it's not. We cannot see. Only we can realize it. Uh, that thing, how that happens, how that happens, I don't know. It will
Mm.
happen probably.
It will. It will. See, it is just that. See, the Krishna has very nicely laid out the path. I know we've gone beyond our time, but
Yeah.
he's laid out the path in saying you need to cultivate these human values,
Mm,
the sthita
right.
prajna lakshanas.
Mm,
So the
right.
more and more we are expressing this love in its truest
Mm,
form,
mm,
then we are close to our nature. And then that while doing that, you're also pursuing self-knowledge. So then you become jnana nishta as well.
mm,
So somewhere we learned later in the next few verses is that for self-knowledge to become steady, you
mm,
require that neutralizing your desires, neutralizing your ragas and dveshas. So they
mm,
both are they uh, they sync they work in not synchrony. They
mm.
are mm, what is that term?
They work together, or
They work
one,
together.
yeah, one leads to the other, maybe. Like,
Yes,
yeah. Mm, yeah.
synergy. There is a synergy between these two.
To
They have that synergistic activity action.
neutralizing, right.
Yes.
Neutralizing
So the more and more
ragadveshas.
you neutralize your raga dveshas, the more clarity dawns with respect to
Mm,
self knowledge.
knowledge.
And the
Mm,
more you are in that self knowledge, the less and less your raga dveshas are binding you. So they both work in harmony.
mm, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. I think we can wind up here.
Sure. I'll
Gone
say the
beyond our
sloka.
time today.
Mhm.
Yeah.
लोका ॐ लोका समस्ता सुखिनो भवन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ तत्सत् श्रीकृष्णार्पणमस्तु हरि ओम् श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरि ओम् जय गुरुदेव
Meditation is accepting this moment, living every moment
Are you playing anything,
totally
Dr.
with
Manana?
depth. Let us keep our spine erect and body relaxed and eyes closed. Relax your shoulders. Keep a big smile on your face. You're sitting like the statue of Buddha, very serene and with a serene smile on your face. Relax your body. Let's take a deep breath in and breathe out. Become aware of your chest region, throat and chest region. If you notice some tension in the body, just let it be. Except those parts of the body where you feel a tension, the other parts are in comfort. Other parts are at peace. Become aware of that also. There are many good things about you and inside of you. Acknowledge them. They will never leave you. And the negative aspect you may see in you is never going to stay with you forever. They are all guests for some time. Let them be. Sit with the total acceptance of yourself the way you are at this very moment. Total acceptance of what is now here will lead us to deeper meditation. Let go of all the effort. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let go of all your effort and be in this emptiness. And slowly and gradually become aware of body and surroundings. And you may gently open your eyes.